Hey, Dan Lerman here. I just recorded me taking the second module of the verbal section of the digital SAT Test 6, and a couple of thoughts before we get to that video. Three things that I think stand out that you could learn from this video. One, this I think is the hardest module on the whole test. I really felt like if I hadn't managed myself as well as I did, I would have missed some questions. And the first big thing I want you to pay attention to is how hard I'm reading up front, how much focus, how much I'm investing in the first read, before I even get to the choices. And I think this is a big thing I see people mess up is they get to the choices, they're kind of looking for a lifeline. It's really the opposite. Most of the heavy lifting is done up front and in making that prediction. So that's the first thing that felt like a huge piece in this module. Second is the move that I talk about all the time, skip and come back. I literally wrote my PhD thesis on this move. When I got stuck and when I didn't see an answer, or if I was just tired, it happened a couple of times, I skipped the question, no ego, wasn't feeling bashful or just kind of down on myself. Took a deep breath, went on to the next question, and came back later. Sometimes I come back a couple questions later. In this case, I think I came back at the end of the test, but you can see I don't see every answer in order. But one thing I absolutely don't do is make things up and kind of BS myself to get to a wrong answer. So skipping and coming back, tremendously helpful, especially there's question 11, I believe, where I skipped twice and I came back and realized I had made a mistake. And, that's par for the course. You have to make a lot of decisions. It's a lot of information. I've been doing this 17 years. I still make little mistakes. I just catch them, and skipping and coming back was the tool to catch them. And the third tool I just want you to be aware of is one of my favorite tools on this section. It's called EWM, Every Word Matters. I'm using it when I get to a word that is wrong. Even if it's just a single word, I'm taking the answer choice off, and I make those decisions quickly and confidently. And I encourage you to use that tool as well. I do have a deeper toolkit for reading and a deeper toolkit for answering questions. And if you guys want, in the comments, you can let me know if you want to see me talk specifically about the toolkits for reading and the toolkits for the toolkit for answering questions. But I'll leave you with the test. It was intense. It was fun. And I hope you get something out of it. Thanks. All right, I'm Dan Lerman. We're going to do module 2 of the verbal section on SAT Test 6, digital SAT Test 6. I'm getting in the zone. This is the hardest section on the test, in my opinion, so just taking a moment. Here we go. The War of 1812 has blank place in historical memory in Britain, partly because it is overshadowed by the much larger concurrent conflict against Napoleonic France. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to make a prediction here. I guess I need to keep reading here. It has blank place in historical memory, partly because it's overshadowed. So like an underrated, because I'm seeing overshadowed, underrated is my prediction. A tenuous, tenuous means like thin, like not well supported. That's pretty good, maybe plus. And enduring, nope, the opposite. I'm going to cross that off. Contentious, no. Contentious means there's like argument about it, no argument. And D, a conspicuous, that's not the right word. So I'm going to say A. But I already feel, man, first question of the second module, this is harder. So I'm happy. I think I got the harder of the two modules here. These are tricky words. All right, next up, deep breath. In 1891, design artist William Morris co-founded the Kelmscott Press, which printed editions of books using pre-industrial methods. Historians argue that Morris's repudiation, repudiation, I think that means to criticize, it's a rare word, of industrialization is blank. The Kelmscott edition's use of handmade materials and intricate ornamentation reminiscent of medieval manuscripts. These meticulously handcrafted elements exemplify the artistry involved. Okay, I'm going to definitely have to reread this because it's hard. They're complicated words, and I can't make a prediction yet. I don't understand it well enough yet. So, another breath. Historians argue that the repudiation of industrialization is blank in the additions use of handmade materials. So, like, baked into might be my prediction. It's baked into the use of materials. Baked into is my prediction. Insensible to, no, that doesn't work. Manifest in, that's pretty good, maybe plus. Scrutinized by, not even close. Complicated by, no. And that's why I kind of was okay making an so-so prediction, because 3 of these answers are so bad that the answer obviously has to be B, manifest in. So keeping it flowing, didn't get too caught up with my prediction, and I still felt like, that was a tough thing to understand, but I had a pretty good prediction that got me to the answer. So on we go. Blank the long-standing trend of overemphasizing teenagers and young adults in research on social media use. Scholars have recently begun to expand their focus to include the fastest growing cohort of social media users, senior citizens. That makes me think of my grandma. Yeah, she's on Facebook all the time. So blank the long-standing trend, going against the long-standing trend. I'm sure it's going to be a fancier word than going against, but I don't care. It's fine. It's going to be something that means going against the long-standing trend. Exacerbating, which means making worse. Nope, that doesn't work. Redressing. Redressing could be right, going against. Epitomizing, not the word I want. And precluding means stopping. Man, I think it's B, but these are hard words. These are rare words I don't encounter that much. So I'm going to skip and come back on this. I'm going to give it some time to marinate in my brain, and I'm going to come back and decide between B and D. Okay, next up. Question type has changed. So now I'm reading the question first. As used in the text, what does the word disputing most nearly mean? Let's read the text. The following text is adapted from James Baldwin's 1956 novel, Giovanni's Room. The narrator is riding in a taxi down a street lined with food vendors and shoppers in Paris, France. In the first module video, I talked a lot about, well, not a lot, but I mentioned visualizing when I'm reading. And now that we're on the reading part of the test, that's kind of what I'm spending most of my mental energy doing. So I'm seeing a yellow taxi in Paris, and I'm thinking back upon, like, I went to Paris last summer. I'm thinking about this street that I saw there, and there's food vendors on the side and shoppers, and it's kind of fun to visualize this. And the year's 1956, so maybe things are in black and white. The multitude of Paris seems to be dressed in blue every day, so I'm visualizing Paris in blue, but Sunday, when for the most part, they put on an unbelievably festive black. Everyone's wearing black now. Here they were now, in blue, disputing every inch our passage. What does that mean? So I'm visualizing the narrator in a taxi trying to go across this tree-lined street or food vendor-lined street, and the people, the Parisians, are blocking them with their wagons, hand trucks, and okay, cool. So disputing means blocking, arguing about, no. Disapproving of, no. Asserting possession of, no. Providing resistance to, blocking, yes. Good. This is a pretty hard question, but I really invested in the first read. I know what's going on. I visualized it, and I got the answer. So I feel like a lot of people would miss this if they didn't do that, but I'm pretty sure I got it right. Okay. 5. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined sentence in the text as a whole? On painter William H. Johnson's return to the United States in 1938 after a decade in Europe, his style underwent an abrupt transformation. Turning away from landscapes, he painted in an expressionist style, a style that often involves using fluid, distorted shapes and thick, textured brushstrokes to express the artist's subjective experience of reality. Okay, so I'm visualizing this older guy, William H. Johnson, painting landscapes, kind of like Bob Ross. That's fun. And then he transitioned to painting portraits of Black Americans. So there's an arrow in my mind, and Johnson is now painting portraits of Black Americans in a bold new way. So the function of that sentence is to specifically describe his transformation? A, it elaborates on the previous sentence statement about a transitional moment. I think that feels right. That feels maybe plus. B, it provides information about Johnson's travels. No. It recounts a moment in Johnson's personal life. Nope, it doesn't talk about his personal life. D, it presents evidence that calls into question the previous sentence. No, that's not right. And notice I'm using EWM in looking at the answer choice. Right when I get to something that's wrong, like in B, travels, it doesn't talk about travels at all. Just that one word makes me take B off. And the same things happen in C and D. So that move, I love that move when I'm going through the answer choices, EWM or every word matters. So that feels good. Okay. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion in text as a whole? Okay, so we've gotten a couple of these questions in a row now. Scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement, a movement that advocated for the social, political, and cultural empowerment of Mexican Americans and reached its zenith or peak in the 1960s and 70s, tend to focus on the most militant, outspoken figures in the movement. Okay, so I'm picturing a magazine about the Chicano movement, and then there's like a military general in there. He's got the word Chicano on his shirt, making it seem uniformly radical. Okay. Geographer Juan Herrera has shown, however, that if we shift our focus toward the way the movement manifested in comparatively low-profile neighborhood institutions and projects, we'll see our participants espousing an array of political orientations and approaches to community activism. Okay. So the underlying part says like this is a bias that scholarly accounts of the Chicano movement how it makes it seem more radical than it is. It mentions specifically the bias. Okay, A, it presents a trend in scholarship on the Chicano movement that the text claims has been reevaluated by researchers in light of Herrera's work on the movement's participants. I think maybe that's right. That feels maybe plus. B, it identifies an aspect of the Chicano movement that the text implies was overemphasized by scholars due to their own, that was really good until their own political orientations, EWM, that can't be right. Okay, it describes a common approach to studying the Chicano movement that, according to the text, obscures the ideological diversity of the movement's participants. That also looks really good. That might be the answer. I'm going to keep it around. D, it summarizes the conventional method for analyzing the Chicano movement, which the text suggests creates a misleading impression of the effectiveness. It doesn't talk about the effectiveness. That word makes it wrong. Okay, and I'm again feeling the difficulty of this section in that in the wrong answer choices, it's just one word that makes them wrong sometimes, and that's hard to pick up on sometimes, especially when you're doing so many questions in a row. So I'm going to reevaluate A and C. If I can't get it, I'm going to skip and come back. Okay, A, it presents a trend in scholarship on the Chicano movement that the text claims has been reevaluated by researchers. Has it been reevaluated by researchers? Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that at first, but it doesn't, I don't think this is right because it has not been reevaluated by researchers. I think that disqualifies A, but let me just check C again. Describes a common approach to studying the Chicano movement that, according to the text, obscures the ideological diversity. Yes, this is right. A was not right. That was hard. I think I got it. I feel like I'm praising myself a lot here. And actually, I'll take a moment. I know this might be coming off as very egotistical. I'm like, Dan, you are amazing. But this is literally how I talk to myself when I'm taking these tests. I'm like coaching myself and giving myself props for figuring out tough questions. And it helps me stay like buoyant, afloat, and have fun with it. So I think it's a good habit to get into. Okay. According to the text, why are some critics skeptical of the concept behind Bosco Verticale? Okay. Since its completion in 2014, Bosco Verticale, which is vertical forest, a pair of residential towers in Milan, Italy, covered by vegetation. I'm visualizing two apartment buildings in Milan that are covered by like grass. It's kind of fun. Has become a striking symbol of environmental sustainability in architecture. Stefano Boeri intended his design, which features balconies that are home to hundreds of trees, to serve as a model for promoting urban biodiversity. However, the concept has faced skepticism. Critics note that although the trees used in Bosco Verticale were specifically cultivated for the project, it's too early to tell if they can thrive in this unusual setting. Okay, so why are they skeptical? They don't know if the trees can survive. They don't know, thrive is the word. They don't know if the wildlife can actually thrive on these apartment buildings. Okay, A, some essential aspects of Bosco Verticale's design are difficult to adapt to locations other than Milan. No, it has nothing to do with other than Milan. B, the plant life on Bosco Verticale ended up being less varied. Nope, doesn't have to do with varied. C, the construction of Bosco Verticale was no less environmentally damaging. Doesn't talk about environmentally damaging. I hope this is right. D, it is unclear whether Bosco Verticale can support the plant life included in its design. Yep, that's pretty much exactly what I predicted. Feel great about it. Let's move. Okay, which choice best states the main idea of the text? All right, these are fun. Elizabeth Asiju has identified a negative correlation between the share of developing countries' economies derived from natural resource extraction and those countries' receipts of foreign investment. This is a sentence that everyone skips and is like, there's nothing to hold on to there, so let me keep reading. And I would urge you to do the exact opposite. So I'm going to use a tool called Make It Real here. Make it real means pick real examples and personalize them to something you know about or something in your life. And I feel like this sentence is going to be important. So this researcher, it sounds like, has identified a negative correlation. So I'm going to visualize this negative correlation. So as, let's say, a developing country, as the economy of, I don't know, a developing country, let's say Madagascar, a share of developing countries' economies, so natural resource extraction. So let's say Madagascar is making a lot of money from diamonds. I have no idea if this is true or not, but it's specific and something I can visualize, so I'm going to use it. So Madagascar, the amount of money they're getting from diamonds goes up, and their receipts of foreign investment. The negative correlation says the amount of money that they're getting from outside of Madagascar goes down. That's weird. That's kind of not what I would expect, and I'm intrigued by that and kind of want to read more. So let's see. This may appear counterintuitive. That's what I thought. Yeah. Resource extraction requires initial investments in extractive technology for like diamond extraction machines at scales best met by multinational corporations. Yeah, it seems like more diamonds in Madagascar would require a lot of money from outside countries. But, transition, Asidu notes that natural resource industries' boom-bust cycle can destabilize local currencies. Oh, so Madagascar, as they're making more money from diamonds, their currency is going up and down, and increase their vulnerability to external shocks. I think that means like economic shocks, creating levels of uncertainty to which foreign investors are typically averse. Okay, so as Madagascar is making more money in diamonds, foreign investors are wary and nervous to put money in. Okay, that's kind of a cool, interesting idea. So what's the main idea of the text? There's a counterintuitive correlation between natural resource extraction and foreign investment. That's my prediction. Although it may seem surprising that foreign investment declines in developing countries as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of those countries' economies, that decline happens because resource extraction requires initial investments too large for foreign investors to apply. I loved this until the end. It doesn't talk about them being too large. B, although developing countries tend to become less dependent on foreign investment as natural resource industries, that has nothing to do with what this was about. C, although one might expect that foreign investment would increase as natural resource extraction makes up a larger share of developing countries' economies, the opposite happens because heavy reliance on natural resources can lead to unattractive conditions for investors. I love it. I'm pretty sure that's right. Let's just make sure. D, although foreign investors tend to avoid initial investments in natural resource industries in developed countries, no, that's not what this is about. Okay, so C, that feels good. And I really feel like I invested in the first read here. My gut just said this was going to be a hard question, which I think it is. But I invested in the first read. I used Make It Real to personalize and come up with that like Madagascar diamond example that helped me figure out what was going on here. Tricky. Okay, next up. Based on the text, Wang, Seeger, and colleagues would most likely agree with what statement about atmospheric NH3, which I think is ammonia. Let's just call it NH3. Okay, let's see how they feel about ammonia. Some astronomers searching for extraterrestrial life have proposed that atmospheric NH3, yes, ammonia, can serve as a biosignature gas, an indication that a planet harbors life. I didn't know the term biosignature gas until this moment, but I'm reading closely. It's an indication that a planet harbors life. So some astronomers think NH3 means they're living creatures here. Zhengcheng Wang, Sarah Seeger, and colleagues evaluated this possibility, finding that on rocky planets, atmospheric NH3 likely couldn't reach detectably high levels in the absence of biological activity. So it sounds like they're agreeing. This team of researchers, I'm visualizing these women, and they think NH3 can, like at high levels, can only be produced by living critters. I'm visualizing some like bugs crawling around Mars or whatever. But the team also found that on so-called mini Neptunes, gas planets smaller than Neptune but with atmospheres similar to Neptune, so now we're not on Mars, we're in a gassy small planet, atmospheric pressure and temperature can be high enough to produce atmospheric NH3. So it sounds like this team of researchers thinks NH3 is not a biosignature gas for like these mini Neptunes. That's my prediction. Okay. A, its presence is more likely to indicate that a planet is a mini Neptune. No, that's not what they're saying. B, its absence from a planet that's not a mini Neptune. It's a lot of double negatives here. Man, its absence from a planet that's not a mini Neptune indicates that this is like so it's like a triple negative here. I don't think this is right, but like I'm just going to get away from this because it's giving me a headache. C, it should be treated as a biosignature gas if detected in the atmosphere of a rocky planet, but not if detected in the atmosphere of a mini Neptune. Yes, that's exactly my prediction. D, it doesn't reliably reach high enough concentrations in the atmospheres of rocky planets or mini Neptunes to be treated as a biosignature gas. No, that's not what they're saying. And B is a perfect example of something like if I get stuck on that, I'm going to waste time and feel like bad about myself. So I just put it in the maybe pile. Maybe that's it, but I'm going to keep on moving. And I think that flow is really important on this section because it feels like this answer was just created to give me a headache, and that's not the right answer. Okay. On we go. Which quotation from lines written in early spring most effectively illustrates the claim? All right, let's find out what the claim is. Lines written in early spring is a 1798 poem by William Wordsworth. Classic, I think a romantic poet. Wordsworth. In the poem, the speaker describes having contradictory feelings while experiencing the sights and sounds of a spring day. I need something contradictory here. So give me something contradictory. Wasn't there something, I think there was something like this on the first module. Okay, through primrose tufts in that sweet bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. I'm not seeing any contradiction here. I don't think that could be right. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must do all I can that there was pleasure there. That seems happy and not contradictory. I don't think so. The birds all around me hopped and played. Their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. That also seems all positive. I hope I see some contradictory feelings in the last one. I heard 1,000 blended notes, while in a grove I sat reclined, in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. Yeah, this is the right answer because sweet mood and sad thoughts is the contradictory feeling. So that feels good. All right, on to the graphs. Which choice best describes data from the graph that support Ibanez and colleagues' conclusion? Let's figure out what their conclusion is. I'm always reading the title on the graph and doing a one-sentence story. So, modeled radial growth of sugar maple trees. The one-sentence story, I'm looking at the key here with nitrogen, without nitrogen, and a climate scenario. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but I'm reading all of the tags on the x-axis. It seems like in the current climate, there's more growth with nitrogen. In the moderate climate change scenario, still like about the same, and an extreme climate change, growth of maple trees goes way down, but nitrogen is always better than not nitrogen. So that's the one sentence. That was kind of a long sentence, but that's what I'm getting from this. Okay. Inez Ibanez and colleagues studied a forest site in which some sugar maple trees received periodic fertilization with nitrogen. I'm visualizing maple trees and fertilizer being dumped on the trees to mimic the broader trend of increasing anthropogenic. I'm not sure I know what that word means. I could maybe guess. I don't really know. Nitrogen deposition in soil. So let me reread that and get the best I can from that. So nitrogen to mimic the broader trend of increasing, maybe naturally occurring nitrogen in soil. I think maybe that's what that means. Ibanez and colleagues modeled the radial growth of the trees with and without nitrogen fertilization under 3 different climate scenarios. Okay, that's tying back to the graph. The current climate, moderate change, and extreme change. Although they found that climate change would negatively affect growth, they concluded that anthropogenic nitrogen deposition could more than offset that effect, provided the change is moderate rather than extreme. So what they're saying, I see this clearly now, is that in the moderate change scenario, if you give these maple trees nitrogen, they actually grow more than currently without nitrogen. But if we go extreme climate change, it doesn't help as much. It doesn't get us back to the current growth. Okay. A, growth with nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change, but the latter exceeded growth without. Wow. Oof. There are a lot of words here. Maybe I'm going to move on. Growth without nitrogen under the current climate. Okay, this can't be right because their conclusion has to do with adding nitrogen. So anything that starts with growth without nitrogen can't be right. That's off. Growth with nitrogen under the moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under moderate change, but the latter exceeded growth without nitrogen under extreme change. That could be right. I'm going to keep it around. And then D, growth without nitrogen. That's got to be wrong too for the same reason. The conclusion is about with nitrogen. Man, A and C look very similar. I'm going to take one more stab. I'm going to skip if I don't see it. Growth with nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change. Okay. What's the difference between these two? Growth with nitrogen under moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under moderate change. Oh, growth with nitrogen under current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change. What are they concluding again? They could more than offset the change provided that the change is moderate rather than extreme. Okay, I think I see the answer, but this is a good skip and come back scenario. I'm close to the answer. I feel like I'm right there, and I'm just gonna let my brain marinate on it. I'll come back later. Okay, reset. So, which finding, if true, would most directly support the researcher's hypothesis? And you know what? I'm noticing. I'm noticing my brain getting a little bit tired, and it's been a lot of reading and a lot of science, and I like reading about science, but I just noticed my brain like a little bit like slowing down. And what I'm going to do now, I almost always do this on module 2, is I'm going to fast forward to some of the questions that are just a little bit less cognitively demanding. So like this one, it seems like it's going to take a while. I'm going to keep moving. I'm not going to answer that yet, and I'll come back and I'll do these later. Same thing, this feels challenging. Okay, and now I'm getting to one that, maybe I'm sure this is going to be tricky, but it's at least going to take less time, and I'm going to let my brain reset and kind of rejuice to get back into the sciencey stuff. So I almost always do this to just maintain, my energy. And I'm like more excited to do these now for whatever reason. So let's get to it. So this is a verb question, and I know verb questions well. It's probably going to have to do with subject-verb agreement. So let's take a look. In August Escoffier's 1903 cookbook, I've heard that name before, I don't know anything about it, titled Le Guide Culinaire. It's probably not pronounced guide, but I don't speak French. The chef included over 5,000 dishes, including, I'm just not going to go for the French pronunciations, baked eggs, jumbo shrimp and garlic sauce, and pine nut tart. Such iconic French recipes, described in surprisingly brief detail in Le Guide Culinaire, blank the Victorian French cuisine Escoffier sought to preserve in his encyclopedic book. Oh yeah, so such iconic recipes is plural, right? They're multiple recipes, so I need a plural verb. They epitomize, that's probably right. They has epitomized, nope, that's a singular verb. They epitomizes, singular verb. They what? So it's just subject-verb agreement here. I need a plural verb because there's a plural subject. It's a. Okay. Which choice best completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? This is a sentence structure and punctuation question. Let's see if we can figure it out. Consider the mechanics of the pinhole camera. Light passes through a tiny or small hole, resulting in a focused projected image. A ray diagram reveals how this works. Because the hole's small size restricts light to a single ray, all light passing through the hole can only arrive at a single destination, eliminating diffraction, ensuring a clear image. Yeah, what I'm seeing is after the punctuation here, we've got a complete sentence. Because the hole's small size restricts light to a single ray, all light passing through the hole can only arrive at a single destination, eliminating diffraction and ensuring a clear image. So since that is a complete sentence, and there's a complete sentence before, ray diagram reveals how this works, it can't be no punctuation. It can't be a comma. That'd be a comma splice. And it works with a period. A ray diagram reveals how this works. Because this dependent clause into an independent clause, the colon doesn't work. The it's feels strange there. I don't think that that's necessary. So B is the right answer here. Okay, 17. Which choice completes so this is going to be another sentence structure and punctuation question. Long attributed to Jacques-Louis David, the preeminent neoclassical painter of his day, the 1801 painting Marie-Josephine Charlotte, more French here, gained fresh attention in the 1990s when art historians discovered that the painting, which depicts a solitary young woman sketching, was actually the work of little-known French portrait artist Marie-Denise Villers. Yeah, I talked about this in the last video. Golden rule of commas. If you don't need them, don't use them. They love testing this around titles. French portrait artist Marie-Denise Villers. There's no punctuation needed. Answer's B. Okay. Another sentence structure and punctuation question here. In 1986, conceptual artist Sophie Calais asked 23 people, all of whom had been born without sight, to describe their image of beauty in rich detail. Calais paired excerpts of these conversations with photographs, both of interviewees and the items they described, from hair to grass to sculptures, to powerful effect in her exhibition, The Blind. I'm noticing this first dash here is a parenthetical dash. So there needs to be another dash, I think, at the end of all of these words, because the excerpts of these conversations with photographs, to powerful effect. Yeah, so the dash should be at the end. B's the only one that does that. Describe from hair to, yep, that's right. And there's a comma there to tack on a dependent clause. B feels good. Okay, American abstract artist Richard Serra, verb question, blank intends his installations to make passers-by keenly aware of how one's movements are affected by the physical features of one's environment. Assembles, oh, this is interesting, and I feel like a lot of people wouldn't read to the end of the sentence here and might get this wrong, but the verb here is actually assembles. Richard Serra assembles. So this has to be parenthetical in the middle. There has to be a comma, intending his installations to make passersby aware, assembles large-scale steel plates into sculptures that dominate the outdoor spaces they occupy. Yeah, comma, intending, because it's parenthetical, and the verb is actually after the parenthetical. Okay, another verb question. A species of Biropsis algae produces toxins to avoid being eaten by predators. However, in some cases, the toxins the organism uses to protect itself from predation actually blank. Okay, verb, subject, verb agreement. What's the subject? The toxins, plural. The toxins is increasing. Nope. That's singular. The toxins increase. That looks good. The toxins increases. That's singular. Toxins has increases. No, we need the plural verb, which is B. Transitions. Let's make our predictions here. So historians agree that jazz pianist Jelly Roll Morton was exaggerating when he claimed to have invented jazz music. No one can deny blank that Morton's innovative compositions and remarkable improvisational skills helped shape jazz as a genre during its early years. My prediction is, however, like he was exaggerating when he invented it, but like he was still pretty important. So, however, is my prediction. Therefore, no. In the second place, no. In other words, no. Though, which is a kind of contrast transition word, like however, exactly what I predicted. Boom. All right. Another transition question. Biographer Michael Gora notes that the novelist Henry James lived in a world of second thoughts, frequently tinkering with his novels and stories after their initial publication. However, the differences between the 1881 first edition and the 1908 edition of his novel Portrait of a Lady are extreme, even by James's standards. Blank, some critics regard the two editions as two different novels altogether. Yeah, like furthermore, along these lines, along these lines, in fact, might be my prediction. All those seem to fit. By contrast, no, there's no contrast. In fact, that was one of my predictions. Nice. Nevertheless, there's no contrast. In other words, no, I think this last piece goes a little further and develops the idea. So my prediction was kind of yeah, it was in fact. So I feel good about it. Really important on these to read carefully and make a good prediction you feel great about. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. In hindsight, given the ideas about the natural world circulating among British scientists in the 1800s, the theory of natural selection was an obvious next step. Oh yeah. It might not have been a coincidence, blank, that Charles Darwin and Alfred Wallace arrived at the concept independently. I would say therefore, like, consequently, that elaborates on this idea because it was an obvious next step. It might not have been a coincidence, therefore, that Darwin and Wallace arrived at the concept independently. However, no, it's not a contrast. Then looks pretty good. Moreover, nope, doesn't work. For example, there are no examples. It may not have been a coincidence then. Yeah, that feels good. Okay. In a recent study, researchers examined the sleeping and waking habits of a group of dairy cows to determine if the cows' patterns of activity suggested that the animals were diurnal, nocturnal, or crepuscular. Blank, the researchers studied whether the cows were most active in the daytime, nighttime, or dawn and dusk. Okay, these seem similar. Specifically might be my prediction. In fact, like specifically, like zoning in, like that kind of prediction. Afterward, no. In other words, maybe. Additionally, it's not adding. Nope, it's not adding. It's kind of the same idea restated. However, no contrast. So yeah, in other words, feels good there. Okay. On to the notes type questions. These are fun. The student wants to emphasize a similarity between P waves and S waves. Okay. So similarity, let's look at the notes. Earthquake started at a point called focus. The two types are primary and secondary. Okay, they both start from a focus would be a similarity. And I think the rest of this is like differences. So they both start from a focus, could be my prediction. P waves and S waves both travel beneath the Earth's surface, causing the ground to move. That feels like a similarity. It feels really good. I'm going to pick it. Let's look at the rest. P waves travel away. Nope, that's not a similarity. It doesn't talk about a similarity between P and S waves, and this is a difference between them. So it is A. A student wants to indicate the California red-legged frog FWS classification. So what is the, I don't know what FWS, but the classification category. Okay, Fish and Wildlife Service. What is the red-legged frogs category? Endangered or threatened? The California is likely to soon become endangered, so it's threatened, is my prediction. So it is threatened. A, species on the FWS list, which includes the red-legged frog, are classified as either endangered or threatened. No, it doesn't tell me that it's threatened. The red-legged frog appears on the list of at-risk species. I don't think that's right. I think we need the word threatened in there. According to the FWS, the California red-legged frog is in the endangered category. I think that's wrong. Likely to soon become endangered, the California red-legged frog is classified as threatened. That's what I need. Yeah. Okay. Student wants to make a generalization about the materials used in Dow replicas. Okay, so we want a generalization about the materials used in Dow replicas. Excuse me. Okay. The Arab Dow is a sailing vessel. Trade. What about the replicas? Mix of modern and traditional materials to build replicas of ancient Dows. Most of them are traditional. And replica hulls are stitched together using the same traditional coconut palm fiber rope used on the hulls of ancient Dows. Okay. My prediction is like a mix of traditional and ancient materials. Okay, A traditional material that was used to stitch together the hulls of ancient Dows. Coconut palm fiber is still used by shipbuilders. I don't think so, but I'll leave it around. B, the ancient Arab Dow was a sailing vessel used primarily for trade and distinguishable by its triangular sails. That's not the materials. Although most materials are traditional, some modern materials are used. That's a generalization. It looks really good. I think that's right. D, contemporary shipbuilders in Oman build replicas of the Dow, which was an ancient sailing vessel with a stitched hull. No, that's not a generalization about the materials. And then I don't think A is a generalization either, so I feel good about that. Okay, let's go back to the ones I skipped. So, which choice completes the text with the most oh yeah, I'm going to repredict here. Blank the long-standing trend of overemphasizing teenagers and young adults. So getting away from was my prediction. I still feel good about that. Let's see which word means that. Redressing. Yeah, that feels like the right word. I don't use that word all the time, but I think it means going back on. And I think that feels right. Precluding, it means more like getting in the way of, and that's not right here. So this is hard, but skipping and coming back, it feels like it gave me the perspective to be pretty confident it's B. D just doesn't fit. Tough question. Okay. Ibanez and colleagues, their conclusion. I remember this question. So they found that climate change would negatively affect growth and concluded that nitrogen could more than offset change as moderate rather than extreme. Okay, growth with nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change, but the latter exceeded, so growth with nitrogen under moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under extreme change. Okay, versus growth with nitrogen under moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under moderate change. So the question, the difference between these is, do you want to compare with nitrogen under the current climate versus with nitrogen under the moderate climate? This feels like an 800 level question. This is, I think, the hardest question on this passage because they both seem okay. But do you want to compare growth with the current climate or the moderate change climate? Moderate change. I'm going to take one more beat here, and if not, I'm going to skip one more time and come back. Let's try one more time. Moderate change. Okay, I'm going to skip one more time. I feel like I'm closer, but I'm not there yet. And there's, again, no ego. I'm just going to skip and come back, and I think something's going to become unlocked there. Okay, these I haven't actually tried yet, so let's go for it. Which would support the researchers' hypothesis. Under normal atmospheric pressure at surface, water molecules form a tetrahedral network stabilized by hydrogen bonds between adjacent molecules. So I'm looking for the researchers' hypothesis. Extreme high pressure destabilizes these bonds and compresses water structure, allowing water molecules within organisms to permeate proteins and impede crucial biologic functions. Yet, deep sea organisms known as piezophiles have adapted to extreme pressure. Studies have found a positive correlation between the depths and concentrations of a compound called TMAO in their muscle tissues, which has led a team of researchers to hypothesize that TMAO reduces water's compressibility. So what supports that TMAO reduces water's compressibility? It strengthens water's bonds or something like that. TMAO strengthens water's bonds is my prediction. Water molecules are found to be impervious to TMAO. I don't think that's right. Examination of TMAO's molecular structure shows that TMAO molecules retain their shape. I don't think it's about the TMAO. I think it's about the water. Positive correlation is found between concentrations of TMAO and the rate at which waters. I don't think it's about the rate. I hope it's this last one. Analysis of water's molecular structure under high pressure reveals hydrogen bonds are more stable when TMAO is present than when it's not. That's exactly what I predicted. Love it. Okay. Which choice best describes the data from the table that supports the conclusion? Okay, simulated change in annual aquifer input and irrigation output if precipitation concentration increases. That's the title. I'm looking at precipitation that is concentrated versus precipitation that is currently evenly distributed. My one sentence story is that for the evenly distributed, everything is higher. All the percentages are higher. Let's figure out what Persad and her colleagues' conclusion is. Some climate models from the western United States predict that while total annual precipitation may remain unchanged from the present level, precipitation will become concentrated into fewer but more intense rain and snow events. University of Texas climate scientist Persad and her colleagues simulated how the amount of water entering aquifers and the amount being used for irrigation would change if this were to occur. If there were more, so this is fewer but more intense rain and snow events. They concluded that concentration of precipitation into fewer events would result in a higher number of dry days, triggering more irrigation, but that this change in irrigation output is highly sensitive to the baseline concentration of precipitation that currently exists. So if the baseline precipitation is currently somewhat concentrated, there are lower percent changes. If it's currently evenly distributed, it's higher. So that's my prediction. If baseline precipitation, these are baseline, is being used, is somewhat concentrated, will increase 0.4% for surface water, 0.9% for groundwater, whereas amount of water entering the aquifers, I think these things are all right. I don't know if it supports the conclusion, so I'm going to keep it in the maybe. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, water use for irrigation will increase only slightly. I think that's right. Whereas it'll increase 9% for surface water and 7.9% for groundwater if baseline precipitation is evenly distributed. This feels right and more relevant. So I gave maybe plus there. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, the amount of water entering aquifers will increase 4.9%, while the amount being used for irrigation will increase 0.4% and surface water. Okay, so this is wrong because it doesn't compare the two baseline scenarios. We need that. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, water used for irrigation will decline by a small amount. That's wrong. The word decline is just dead wrong. Okay, so I'll take one more second to look at A versus B. I think it's probably B. But let's take a look. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, the amount of water being used for irrigation will increase by 0.4 and 0.9. Yeah, this doesn't compare the two things that I want to compare, whereas I think B does. If baseline precipitation is somewhat concentrated, water use will increase only slightly, whereas it'll increase 9% for surface and 7.9% if it's evenly distributed. Yeah, that makes her point that it's like a bigger deal if the baseline is evenly distributed. Okay, one more here, and then I'll go back to 11, and we'll wrap up. Okay, I haven't looked at this one yet. Let's see. In a 2013 study, Agnes Guinda, Jose Yarvedra, and Manuel Dominguez Rodrigo compared the feeding behaviors of wild lions in Tanzania's Tarangire National Park with those of captive lions in Spain's reserve. Okay, so I'm picturing wild, big, strong lions and captive lions that are small and weak in Spain. Two groups. The researchers noted that the previous studies focused on other carnivores have shown that providing animals with food at regular intervals, as is common in captive settings, so I'm picturing the weak Spanish lions, like getting meals every day at noon, may inadvertently facilitate the development of novel stereotypic, purposely repetitive behaviors. So I'm envisioning like the lions tapping on the floor repetitively and like smoking cigarettes repetitively by reducing the need for a high degree of cognitive engagement with the environment. Okay, so maybe it's not good for these weak Spanish lions to be getting fed every day. The researchers were therefore not altogether surprised to find that the weak Spanish lions were doing some weird repetitive behavior. Bones from carcasses provided to the captive lions showed signs of extensive gnawing beyond the point of nutrient extraction, whereas bones from the prey hunted lions did not. This looks good because the captive lions, the Spanish lions, were doing this weird thing. It wasn't smoking cigarettes, but they're like gnawing the bone. So I think that's probably the right answer. B, during feeding episodes, captive lions showed more aggression. It has nothing to do with aggression. C, when caretakers placed food in boxes that were cognitively demanding to open, captive lions showed repeated behaviors similar to those that wild lions showed. No, it has nothing to do with similar. And D, captive lions showed a stereotypic behavior of pacing their enclosures as feeding time approached, whereas wild lions showed a stereotypic behavior. No, the wild lion should not show a stereotypic behavior. So A is the right answer. On to the last one. This is hard. This, I think, is the hardest question. So I'm going to just take one more deep breath. I've skipped and come back a couple times, and let's see if I can get it this time. So the conclusion is that nitrogen can more than offset the change, provided that the change is moderate rather than extreme. So I took off the ones without nitrogen. And I'm realizing only B had without nitrogen. I don't know why I took off D. That makes no sense because it says with nitrogen. Okay, let's go through these one more time. Growth with nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change. With nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change. That's right. I'm going to leave it. C, growth with nitrogen under the moderate change exceeded growth without nitrogen under moderate change. No, we need something that compares moderate change to current change. That's what they're saying here in the conclusion. Okay, growth with nitrogen under moderate change, that's this gray one, exceeded growth without nitrogen under the current climate. That's what I was saying before when I first predicted it. I missed it because I made a mistake. I had taken that one off. So I think that's the right answer. Let me just look one more time. Growth with nitrogen under the current climate exceeded growth with nitrogen under moderate change. No, that doesn't work because it's not talking about nitrogen making up for the growth, making up for the climate change. So that can't be right. And then growth with nitrogen under the moderate change exceeded without nitrogen under moderate change. You can't compare moderate change to moderate change. You need the one that compares this light gray bar with nitrogen moderate change to this black bar, current climate without nitrogen. The only one that does that is D. Final answer. I'm going to go submit my work.